when Bob Crane went from being the beloved star of the TV show Hogan's Heroes to becoming the victim of a terrible murder. Fans were left completely shocked. The whole thing was horrific, and everybody was waiting to hear the comforting news that the police had caught whoever did it. But to everyone's surprise, only more bad news kept coming, because when police arrived at the crime scene, they simply could not gather enough physical evidence to figure out who the killer was. For decades, every time they got close to identifying someone, it turned out to be the wrong person. Now, decades later, new evidence has come to light, and it may finally help explain who killed Bob Crane. But be warned, the truth is not pretty. Going back to a simpler time, Bob Crane was born Robert Edward Crane on July 13, 1928, growing up in Stamford with his older brother and their parents. The youngest Crane fell in love with music early and was never shy about showing it. By the time he was 11 years old, Crane had gotten his hands on some drumsticks and made drums his whole world. He later said, "I knew I wanted to be an entertainer just as soon as I started studying the drums in grade school. And this was not just a passing interest either, because by the time he reached junior high, he was already putting together local drum and bugle parades with friends from around the neighborhood." Moving into high school, Crane wasted absolutely no time, joining every music group he possibly could. He was not only part of the school orchestra, he also joined the marching band and the jazz band too. Crane was so talented that he soon found himself playing with the Connecticut Symphony Orchestra while he was still in high school. After finishing school, he joined the Connecticut Army National Guard. The following year, he married his high school sweetheart, and Terzian. After getting married, Crane was honorably discharged from the National Guard after 2 years of service. Now out of the military and newly married, young Crane needed a way to make money, and he turned to the one thing he had always been good at, and that had never let him down: the drums. He said about that time in his life, "I played with many bands in Connecticut and New York. I knew I did not want to be a band drummer all my life, but the drums kept me going while I looked for a job in radio." Crane eventually landed a job in radio as a DJ for a station in Connecticut, but he quickly started doing a whole lot more than just spinning records. Another talent Crane had that not many people knew about was his natural ability to talk to people really well. He was funny, witty, and seemed to know a little bit about almost everything. That extra skill helped him hold onto his radio job for the next 6 years. And if you have been on the radio that long, you are going to build up a pretty big fan base. Having a huge following made Crane someone that other radio stations wanted to steal away from where he was already working. Crane himself only had 2 cities in mind, and he was very open about it. He said, "I got offers from bigger cities, but I only wanted to go to either New York or Los Angeles." So when an offer finally came in from Los Angeles, the decision was easy, and he did not waste a single second saying yes. Even in this brand new city with a brand new job, the same old drums were still very much part of the picture. He would do his DJ work and make it feel special by playing live drums along with whatever music he was putting on. Crane played the drums live Monday through Saturday for 4 hours every single day. He did all of this while hosting interviews at the same time, which listeners started calling organized chaos. The show was big enough to bring in huge celebrity guests like Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, and Bob Hope. His show quickly shot to the top of the morning ratings with grown-up listeners, and he became the undisputed king of Los Angeles radio. It was clear that Crane's radio show was something really special, and while it gave him a lot of satisfaction, he still wanted more for himself. He said, "I loved doing the show, but I always wanted to be an actor. I do not believe in acting school, at least not for me. The only way to learn was to actually get out there and act." And that was the starting point for what would turn into a successful but very controversial future. Crane was a hard worker through and through. and was always the kind of person who put in real time and effort to get better at whatever he was going after. So even while he was still doing the radio show every day, he also started working with small local theaters to build up his acting skills. Luckily, he was in a good enough financial spot to afford the extra cost of learning. And learn he absolutely did. Eventually, just like with everything else Crane had ever put his hands to, he got really good at acting, and soon landed a role in the film Return to Peyton Place. That role opened the door to more acting opportunities. He did some guest hosting for Johnny Carson on the daytime game show Who Do You Trust? His desire to keep acting led him to audition for and land appearances on The Twilight Zone, even agreeing to do it without being credited. But that was a small price to pay for what was coming next. Crane got parts on Channing, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and General Electric Theater. And all of this extra work was still happening at the same time as his radio show. Then something lucky happened. One of his famous guests on the show turned out to be Carl Reiner. And when Reiner came in, Crane talked him into getting him a guest appearance on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Crane had been hoping just to land a role on that popular show. But what ended up happening was like getting two great things at once. He landed the role on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then caught the attention of Donna Reed, who was running her own show on ABC. Reed offered Crane a guest spot on the Donna Reed Show, but he made so much of that chance, and gave such a great performance, that after that episode did well. Crane's character, Dr. David Kelsey, was written into the show's ongoing story, and Crane became a regular cast member. Amazingly, Crane kept working full-time on his radio show. The whole time he was doing the Donna Reed Show too. He kept this up until December 1964 when he left the show. The following year, it looked like the radio show was going to take up even more of his time. But then along came Hogan's Heroes, the sitcom that would make Crane's acting career a permanent fixture in Hollywood. Hogan's Heroes was a CBS television sitcom set inside a World War II prisoner of war camp. It followed the sneaky sabotage and spy missions of Allied soldiers led by Colonel Robert Hogan, all happening right under the noses of the clueless German guards watching over them. Crane was offered the lead role to play Colonel Robert Hogan. The show was an instant hit. The ratings were through the roof, finishing in the top 10 in its very first year on air. Crane talked about how he had to walk away from his radio show to focus completely on playing Colonel Robert Hogan, which made total sense. It would have been impossible to do both demanding jobs at the same time, and nobody was surprised by his choice either. Crane had always made it crystal clear that acting was his real passion. He said about making the switch, "I actually took a pay cut to go from radio DJ to full-time acting, but that is what I wanted to do." And honestly, it showed in how fully and completely he threw himself into that character. Ask anyone old enough and they will confirm that in the 1960s Bob Crane was a name that everybody in America knew. He was charming and one of the biggest and brightest personalities on television in that whole decade. The series ran for 6 seasons on CBS, and Crane was nominated for an Emmy Award in 1966 and 1967. As the show was coming toward its end, Crane and his co-stars worked together on and released a feature film called The Wicked Dreams of Paula Schultz, set in the divided city of Berlin during the Cold War. Crane also started spreading out beyond Hogan's Heroes, starring alongside Abby Dalton in a dinner theater production of Cactus Flower. And when Hogan's Heroes was finally canceled in 1971, Crane appeared in 2 Disney films, playing the lead in Super Dad, and taking on a smaller role in Gus. Getting back to the theater, Crane bought the rights to a comedy play called Beginner's Luck, and started touring with it as both its star and its director, at the Showboat Dinner Theater in St. Petersburg, Florida, and at other dinner theaters around the country. While doing theater work, Crane also appeared as a guest on several TV shows, including Policewoman, Gibbsville, Quincy Me, and The Love Boat. He would later come back to television with his very own series called The Bob Crane Show on NBC. But it got cancelled after only 14 episodes. But behind all the spotlight and success, people started questioning who Bob Crane really was. His real private life was packed with secrets and controversy. He had divorced and his wife of 21 years, and the mother of his 3 children, just so he could marry Patricia Olsen, an actress who appeared on Hogan's Heroes, under the stage name Sigrid Valdis. But she turned out to be just one of several women Crane had gotten involved with on the show, before eventually marrying Olsen. He had already started an affair with Hogan's Heroes co-star Cynthia Lynn, the actress who played Helga. That affair had been going on while he was still married to Anne, and when Lynn was replaced by Olsen on the show, he started dating her instead. He then married Olsen right on the set of the show later that year, with series co-star Richard Dawson serving as his best man. But there was even more about Crane that made people around him uncomfortable. It came out that Crane regularly videotaped and photographed his own sexual activities. And this was not just rumor and gossip. There were actual stories of him showing film crews explicit photos of himself with different women. Another deeply uncomfortable part of the story was Crane's constant companion in all of this, a man named John Henry Carpenter. Crane and Carpenter reportedly met after a mutual friend introduced them during a run of Hogan's Heroes. Carpenter was a regional sales manager for Sony Electronics, who often helped famous clients set up and use their video equipment. The 2 men became friends and started going out together to bars and nightclubs. Crane was a big celebrity and attracted a lot of women because of his fame, and he would often introduce Carpenter to these women by telling them he was his manager. The 2 men would then film and photograph their joint encounters with these women. Carpenter later became national sales manager at a consumer electronics company called Acquitted, and started arranging his business trips to line up with wherever Crane was touring, so the 2 could keep filming their encounters together. Crane's son Scotty, who later wrote a book about his father, insisted that all of the women involved knew they were being recorded and agreed to it. But several of those women claimed they had no idea they had ever been recorded, until someone told them after the fact. At the time all of this was going on, Crane's career was already starting to suffer from the backlash of the controversy surrounding him. Even when it was still being treated as rumor, word had reached the people in charge at Walt Disney Productions, and they were not happy about it at all, saying that people were talking, and the stories were starting to show up in publications like the National Enquirer. In early 1978, Crane filmed a travel documentary in Hawaii and recorded an appearance on a Canadian afternoon cooking show called Celebrity Cooks. During that taping there were claims that Crane had been in a bad mood and had made inappropriate jokes about death and sex. But those claims were denied by the show's producers, who said they would have stopped filming if anything like that had actually been said. Whether that was true or not, the fact was that as Crane was getting close to turning 50, he started talking about wanting to make some real changes in his life. He told his son he was going to divorce Olsen and cut ties completely with Carpenter. According to reports, Crane wanted to let go of everything from the past and start completely fresh with a clean slate. But all of those plans were suddenly and violently destroyed, because something made sure a new version of Bob Crane would never get the chance to exist. 2 weeks before his 50th birthday, Crane was found dead. He had been beaten to death in his apartment. At the time he was staying at the Winfield Place Apartments in Scottsdale.